you wrote a fantastic piece about the end of Obamaism, it's hard to say, for Newsweek. That piece is being shared widely. The American people have definitely rejected that agenda. They are backing Trump's MAGA movement. What will be the impact on Barack Obama's legacy here? And what do you see, not just for the next 4 years of Trump's second term, but beyond that?
This is one of the most important questions that I don't think we know the answer to yet. In fact, my father-in-law just asked me this question the other day, and I wasn't sure how to answer him either. Look, if Democrats are actually going to be intellectually honest, if they were actually going to arrive at the correct conclusions as to what went so catastrophically wrong in this particular election cycle, then they're going to realize that the Barack Obama coalition is over, that the one-time coalition of the ascendant, as was commonly referred to, has actually now descended into utter ruination and decay and decline, and it has just totally and completely collapsed. And this is a coalition that was formed based on all the intersexual constituent parts of America. You had Blackens and Hispanics and immigrants and young people and this and that, and it's all done. I mean, Donald Trump has shattered that coalition. So it logically follows that if Democrats are actually going to soberly realize that the guy who put his entire legacy on the line yet again, Barack Obama, which he did this cycle, he spoke with the DNC in Chicago. He was all over the campaign trail for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in those final moments. He really put his entire two-term legacy on the line for this miserable, awful ticket, and he lost big time. So if you combine the fact that the ticket actually lost and then Barack Obama's signature coalition lost, he should be gone. I mean, he should be out of public light. He should be relegated to Martha's Vineyard, go host some fancy cocktail parties for your elite crowd, whatever there. That is what should happen. But again, to circle back to what we were saying a few minutes ago, I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think that they're actually going to arrive at any of the correct conclusions. So I seriously think, Rita, that 4 years from now in 2028, when J.D. Vance will probably be elected the next president of the United States, I think 4 years from now in 2028, Democrats are just going to run the same playbook all over again. I don't think it's actually going to work any better 4 years from now than it did this cycle.
And we're going to have the same pollsters telling us how close it is, and they'll be terribly wrong again because they are sampling the wrong people. You've been busy this week. You've written about 6 pieces. I don't know where you find the time to sleep. But one of those pieces was for the New York Post about what Trump hopes to achieve in his first 100 days in office for his second term. We know he's all about America first. That's the agenda. But what do you expect to see in terms of the war in Ukraine and the war between Hamas and Israel?
Well, from a foreign policy perspective, I think Donald Trump is going to prioritize finding an off-ramp for both Vladimir Zelensky and Vladimir Putin when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. Look, he has said in the past that he is going to get this deal done in one day. I'm not entirely sure that that is going to happen, but I think it actually is going to happen sooner rather than later. The difference between Donald Trump and Western leaders writ large when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine conflict is that Donald Trump, as a businessman, understands a certain thing called leverage. And he understands that when you incentivize Vladimir Zelensky and you communicate to him that the entire West is going to arm Ukraine to the brink unless and until they recover every single square inch of territory, that's not exactly sending the right incentives to wind down this conflict. But Donald Trump is a pragmatist. He's a realist. I think he's going to find a way to get an end to this conflict sooner rather than later, probably in the first 100 to 200 days at the absolute most, possibly even sooner than that, when it comes to an off-ramp that can be ultimately taken back to be politically palatable for both Putin and Zelensky. When it comes to the conflict in Israel, I think Donald Trump is basically just going to tell Bibi Netanyahu, do what has to be done to wrap this thing up sooner rather than later when it comes to both Hamas in Gaza as well as Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Iranian piece of the puzzle is a little bit more complicated, of course. That's not going to happen overnight there. But all indications that I've seen thus far are that Donald Trump is going to put back into place all of the maximum pressure campaign tactics that he had against the Iranian regime the first time, including the sanctions on oil exports. Really, it's the lapse of those sanctions that the Biden-Harris administration has put into place that have funded the regime, that have led them to sow the seeds of jihadist chaos throughout the region these past 4 years. I think we're going to see a very similar Iran policy that Donald Trump had the first time around, and that was a very good policy, so I hope it to be the case as well.
Now, before you go, I mentioned at the top of the show that you predicted Donald Trump would win every single swing state. I don't think anybody else was that confident about that. You said it was not going to be close. Ignore the polls. It was going to be a landslide. You were right about that, and you've been saying it for some time. So the question is, why were the pollsters, the overwhelming majority of them, so wrong? How do they keep getting it wrong? Are they not losing all credibility? We had one pollster suggest that Iowa was up for grabs for the Democrats, and Trump ended up winning it by 13-14%.
Yeah, and by the way, that pollster in Iowa, her name is Ann Seltzer. She's the chief pollster for the Des Moines Register, the biggest newspaper in Iowa. You know, she's considered to be the gold standard of Iowa pollsters. In fact, in the first in the nation Iowa caucuses, it's the final Ann Seltzer poll that traditionally has been looked to as an actual projection. So, you know, even the pollsters here in America that are considered to be the best of the best, the point that I'm making, have been just totally botching the Trump phenomenon, frankly, since the get-go. And I actually think, Rita, and the reason that I was able to predict, I think, the fact that Donald Trump would sweep all 7 of the swing states across the Sun Belt and the Great Lakes area, the reason is fairly simple, and it's structural and methodological, is that the pollsters thus far have still not found a way to tap into the low propensity Trump voter.
Josh Hammer, thanks for your time.